Hello everybody and welcome to another one of these One Piece discussion videos. Today we're going to be talking about legendary pirate Rox D. Xebec, who according to Sengoku was the captain of the strongest pirate crew in the world until the Rocks got defeated at God Valley. One by one they all just fade away. Because Xebec has been hyped up. He was hyped up during the intermission of Act 2 leading up to Act 3 of Wano, so I kind of have to wonder why that is. Because Oda's not stupid and he's not a bad writer, so I can't believe that he would just introduce this legendary character and then say, oh, by the way, he's never going to pop up in this story ever again. Bye! So with that in mind, we're going to be taking a look at Xebec's character in relation to the current for Yonko, because this is the Yonko saga that we're in. And then we're also going to be talking about the possibility, the idea of Xebec making a return.
So this is a statement from Oda that was translated by Sandman on Twitter. And this statement was from Jump Festa 2017. So it was December 2017, and this was before we actually got to Wano. And so Oda goes on to say that he'll be introducing one of the greatest legends that lurks in the One Piece world. He says the greatest enemy ever for the Straw Hats, right? And then he says perhaps it will be something related to Whitebeard. And so in 2017, after this statement was published, we got the Reverie in 2018, and then after that we got Wano. And so I think a lot of people, myself included, automatically assumed that because we got the Reverie in 2018, that the character that Oda was referring to in this statement was Imu-sama. You know, because Imu-sama is an enemy, and he'll probably be the final villain of the series. So the whole greatest enemy of the Straw Hats, that makes sense. What doesn't make sense, though, is that Oda says perhaps this lurking legend will be something related to Whitebeard. What does Imu have to do with Whitebeard? Don't get me wrong, it could still be Imu that he's referring to here, but at the same time, it's like, there's no connection thus far that we know of between Imu and Whitebeard. And yet, it was during that very same arc, the Reverie, that in addition to being introduced to Imu, we also got the very first mention ever of the Rocks pirates. And Rocks obviously has a connection with Whitebeard because Whitebeard used to be in that crew. So is this statement about Imu, or is it about Rox D. Xebec?
Could Rox and Imu potentially end up being the same character, even? Unlikely, but not impossible. Or it could be a scenario wherein which if Imu is supposed to satisfy this Kaguya sort of role, then it would be up to Rox D. Xebec to fill in or satisfy the Madara Uchiha sort of role of the One Piece world. And if that's the case, hopefully it gets done right.
See, one of the narrative threads that connects Imu to Rocks is a quote from Sengoku from chapter 957. Because in the official translation for that chapter, Sengoku says that Rocks was aiming to become king of the world. And it's interesting that he doesn't say that he wanted to become king of the pirates, but king of the world. It's a very specific description, right? So just the notion that Rocks knew that that was even a title that existed is intriguing, considering the fact that we know that the government lies to the entire world by saying that there is no one ruler, right? That the empty throne in Marijoa is a symbol that represents the lack of a dictatorship. That the world isn't being ruled by one person. Yet we all know that this is just false because Imu is the one who sits on the throne and tells the Gorosei what to do. So the actual title of being king of the world that Xebec wanted is actually the same title that Imu currently holds. In other words, unless Xebec and Imu turn out to be the same person, Xebec failed to become what Imu actually is now. And this is further supported by Stelly saying in Reverie that whoever sits on the empty throne becomes king of the world. Another thing that Sengoku says in chapter 957 is that Xebec was actually considered Roger's most formidable rival. And this makes a lot of sense from an ideological standpoint if you compare what each of their goals were. Because Rox's goal about being king of the world was about ruling over people and conquering stuff, whereas being king of the pirates, that was about being the person with the most freedom and about not ruling over anything. Now Sengoku goes on to say that because Rox had the goal of becoming king of the world, then this meant that he was digging into the world's taboo subjects, the forbidden truths of the world, which means that Rox probably knew about the poneglyphs, the Will of D, the Void Century, and this is why Rox knew that Imu's position was even a thing. And so because of him knowing so much, the government decided to erase Rocks D Xebec from history, which is why very few people actually talk about Xebec nowadays.
So in order to know about rocks, you would have to be either old or a big shot, or both, because God Valley vanished from the map. I'm assuming that it was destroyed via a buster call, but you never know. It could actually be an island that submerged itself into the water after everything went wrong. What I do think is worth noting here, though, is that at least 3 out of the 4 current Yonko seem to have some type of connection or link to rocks. Big Mom and Kaido, they were apprentices on the crew. That's kind of where their rivalry started. And now they're forming an alliance. So I could 100% guarantee that at the very least, there's going to be some talk between Kaido and Big Mom about their previous captain.
Lean, lean. Sit down. Pour yourself some sake and talk to me about the good old days.
One by one, they all just fade away.
Now, I'm pretty sure the connections between Blackbeard and Rocks are already pretty well known among the fandom, but in case you forgot, it bears repeating that the island in which we saw Blackbeard for the first time, post-time skip, was also the same island in which the Rocks pirate crew was formed. And Blackbeard has a ship called Saber of Xebec. Also, Teach is being set up in the story to be Luffy's rival, much like Rocks was Roger's rival. Plus, in an SBS, Oda stated that one of Teach's hobbies is studying history. So that's pretty much like what Rocks was doing, in that he was poking and digging into the secrets of the world. Another bit of speculation regarding Rocks is that if you take a look at his ship, the black sail at the front seems to be designed after the same wavy effect produced by the Yami Yami no Mi. So it wouldn't surprise me if Blackbeard learned about Rocks having the power of the Yami Yami no Mi, learned about how powerful the fruit could be because of Rocks somehow, and then he himself set out with the goal of obtaining that same power no matter what. Now, the way the O looks in Rocks' name on the sail also looks a lot like a burning skull. So if Rocks had the same type of body as Teach that allowed him to consume more than one devil fruit, it's possible that he had both the Yami Yami and the Mera Mera no Mi. Another very interesting mystery about Teach is the identity of his 10th Titanic captain. If you remember back in Dressrosa, what I'm talking about is when Burgess gets introduced in the Colosseum, Gat says that Blackbeard has the support of his 10 Titanic captains. And so those are essentially Blackbeard's main crew members, right? Yet the problem here, though, is that if you actually count them, you only get a total of 9 out of the 10. Because Blackbeard's the captain, so he doesn't count. So if you count the other crew members, you only get 9. So who is the final 10th captain then? We're missing one, essentially. It can't be Stronger, because he's just a horse. I also doubt it's Aokiji, because he's more like an outsider type of ally that just goes around doing his own thing. That, and the last time we saw Aokiji, he was just riding around on his own penguin, instead of sailing on one of Blackbeard's official ships. And so, given what we know about Kuzan, I agree with a lot of fans who think that it's likely that he's a member of the Sword Initiative within the Marines. And so I think it could be kind of cool if Drake calls him up to Wano as backup if the situation there gets too crazy, too out of control.
Ice Age!
So yeah, I think it's pretty eerie still that there's a member of Blackbeard's crew that we essentially know nothing about. And then another thing here is that Blackbeard having 10 crew members could also point towards Luffy getting a final crew member for his own, since the Straw Hats are currently 10 people, and they would need a total of 11 people if they're going to challenge Blackbeard in a 1v1.
Now, the absence of Blackbeard's 10th Titanic captain gets me to think about Marco's message to Luffy, because when Nekomamushi went to recruit Marco, which, by the way, like where is Nekomamushi in the storyline right now? Hasn't arrived yet in Wano, but Marco told him, "I'm not going to go with you, but if you're going to go to Wano, please let Luffy know about this thing," and then just cuts off, and we never learn what that is. So I wonder if it has something to do with the 10th Titanic captain, because Marco fought Blackbeard during the Payback War. So if Teach's crew was completed back then, I feel like Marco would know about who this mysterious 10th Titanic captain is. Now, according to the wiki, Teach is 40 years old currently. Okay, so he's 40 years old, and again, it's obvious that he knows about rocks. Just super obvious. In fact, you can even make the argument that he's following Rocks' footsteps. And then, with that in mind, I think if Blackbeard knows about rocks, then Shanks is also guaranteed to know about rocks. Because Shanks is 39, and so that kind of puts him around the same age as Blackbeard. Now, Shanks shouldn't just know about rocks because he's 39, but also because he was part of the Pirate King's crew.
One of the greatest mysteries in the entire series is how Shanks is able to exert influence over pirates, the Marines, and the world government alike, right? And as far as we know, there's only like about 3 characters that I can think of that have that type of influence. One of them is obviously Shanks. The other one used to be Doflamingo because he could get away with stuff because he knows about the national treasure of Marijoa. And the other one is Garp, who, despite the fact that Garp is the father of Monkey D. Dragon, the revolutionary leader, the most wanted man in the world, and despite the fact that Garp is also Luffy's grandfather, Garp is still able to keep his job as a Marine and also be known as the hero of the Marines for taking down rocks by partnering with Roger. So if we look at Shanks' past, we'll find that he was actually very young when Roger took him aboard his ship. In fact, there's a panel in chapter 966 where Roger and Rayleigh are playing with baby Hiyori and Momonosuke, and Roger says that he hasn't spent time with a baby in ages. And he can't be referring to Ace because Ace wasn't born yet. And then Rayleigh says that playing with the babies reminds him of the old days. So it's pretty much hinted at that the Roger Pirates took in Shanks when he was just a baby. And according to the timeline, Shanks was actually born a year before the God Valley incident took place. So if Roger picked him up after that, then the statements about Momonosuke and Hiyori reminding Roger and Rayleigh about the times when Shanks was a little baby make sense. Perfect sense. And so after the God's Valley incident happens and the island vanishes off the map, the Roger pirates sail away with a little red-headed baby that has no mom or dad.
Or at least that's what the legends say. And by legends, I mean rumors. And by rumors, I mean online fan speculation.
So if you buy into that whole narrative, then it becomes easier to see that perhaps the pirate that Shanks wanted to talk to the Gorosei about was not Luffy or Teach, but that instead he wanted to talk to them about his very own father, Rox D. Xebec.
And there's a very constant theme in the story of One Piece about fathers raising sons that aren't biologically theirs. We see this with Tom raising Frankie, Zeph raising Sanji, Ace and Whitebeard, Sabo and Dragon, Shanks and Roger. It's this whole thing about not letting blood determine who your family is. And we also see that with the Straw Hats as well. So it wouldn't be too surprising if it turns out that Roger was responsible for taking care of or raising the child of his most formidable rival. Especially if you think back on Roger being in prison and him asking Garp as a final favor to take care of Ace.
Also, Shanks being Rox's son would also explain why he went in person to warn Whitebeard about Teach, since he probably found out that he was following his father's footsteps and that he would soon become a much bigger danger very soon. And this could also serve to add more depth to something that Rayleigh tells Luffy when they first meet, which is that there were things about Shanks that Rayleigh didn't feel comfortable telling Luffy, or actually didn't tell Luffy about, because Shanks didn't reveal those things to Luffy himself. Another thing is that in the panels where we actually get to see Rock's silhouette surrounded by the future Yonko, we see that there's a significant height difference between Rock's and the future Yonko. It's a small little detail, but I think it's worth mentioning and remembering because we also happen to know that Shanks is currently the shortest amongst the Yonko.
I kind of view Shanks as in sort of like the same boat as Doflamingo, where in which maybe Shanks inherited some secret information from Xebec, because Xebec was digging into the taboo subjects of the world, and so maybe Shanks took that knowledge and decided to make or strike up a deal with the world government in exchange for not spreading that knowledge to the world. Or maybe he just got all of that information directly from Roger, and that's how he made the deal. In addition, I also see Shanks as somebody who would say to the Gorosei, to the world government, you know, I know all this stuff, but I want you to know that despite the fact that I was raised by the Pirate King, and despite the fact that I'm Xebec's son, I'm not interested in either becoming Pirate King or becoming king of the world. Like, that's just not what I want to do. So maybe that gave the Gorosei and the world government some peace of mind to just not be too worried about Shanks, and that's why they have the relationship that they do. Also, Shanks meeting up with the Gorosei coincidentally happens right after the Marines get word that Big Mom and Kaido are thinking about running into each other, because they were using a phone line, a Denden Mushi line, that wasn't secure because they didn't care who heard them. So they were just like promoting this whole thing to the world. So if Shanks heard of this and he made the connection, oh no, this is about rocks, or this could lead to, the revival of some portion of the Rocks pirates, I need to talk to the Gorosei about this. I also find it interesting that when Sengoku is talking about Xebec, specifically about what happened to Xebec, his fate, I've read like different translations, and they say something like, Xebec is no longer among us. Or one of them said, he's no longer of this world. And I'm like, wow, that's a very strange way to describe somebody who's dead. So to quote Albus Dumbledore in Sorcerer's Stone, I'm afraid, Harry, that there are ways in which he can come back.
I mean, we know for a fact that there are powers in the world that seem to be able to overcome death. Brooks Devil Fruit is one example, and Moria can reanimate corpses with his shadows, which isn't the same thing as reviving someone, but I do think it's interesting that Teach seemed to want to recruit Moria the last time we saw him. There's also the power of the Opi Opi no Mi, Law's Devil Fruit, which can grant somebody immortality at the expense of the surgeon's life. And so a lot of fans expect Law to make use of that power sometime in the future, since it's already been foreshadowed. We also have Big Mom's Devil Fruit power in play, the Soru Soru no Mi, which is a fruit that allows her to manipulate and control souls. Now, Pound says in Whole Cake Island that Big Mom can't use her ability to infuse a human or a corpse with a new soul. However, he does go on to say that she can use the ability on animals and inanimate objects. And as of right now, I think we can all agree that we haven't seen Big Mom use her ability to its full potential yet.
Another very important thing to keep in mind here, and we know this from Dressrosa, is that the will of D will always brew up a storm, okay? We know that for a fact, and we know that Kaido's goal, when he was first introduced, he said he wanted to start the greatest war the world has ever seen. And so if that's his goal, and he's alluding to the conflict branching out from Wano, from Onigashima, if you compare the scale of what the Straw Hats are up against at Onigashima, right, with something like, let's say, something like the scale of Marineford, I think it's important to remember that Marineford was full of people with the D initial. I mean, we had Garp there, we had Luffy there, we had Teach there. The whole conflict revolved around saving Ace, who was also a D, and then Law showed up by the end there as well. So there was a bunch of Ds at Marineford. Right now in Wano, we have two. We have Law and Luffy. All right, so there's a lack of Ds right now in Wano, and I think there has to be either somebody show up, which is why I've been proposing the idea that I think Blackbeard is going to show up at some point. Either that or somebody else that we already know could be revealed to be a D. And again, I'm saying this because Kaido is saying, like, I want to start the biggest war this world has ever seen. He wants to start a storm, essentially. And remember, the will of D will always brew up a storm. And it seems like the way Oda has been setting this up, it seems like this war in Onigashima, in Wano, will be the second to last storm of the series before the final fight against the world government. I think this is also why a lot of people are supportive of the idea of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet showing up in Wano as well. Because I think there's a lot of indicators that are pointing towards the notion that the battle for Onigashima will be a lot bigger than what meets the eye.
Remember, when Kaido and Big Mom formed their alliance, they also said that the Fire Festival this time around would be especially great because it would also be their anniversary. The anniversary of the formation of the Rocks Pirates. Finally, back in Reverie, when we first got the mention of Rocks, in the manga Garp says something like, the upcoming events will surpass our imagination anyway. And in the anime, they added a line where he says, he's talking to the Marines and says, you guys remember Marineford? Yeah, a bunch of crazy things went down back then, one right after the other. But even that wasn't big enough. And so I kind of made the connection back to when Oda showed us Garp's history with Don Qingjiao back in Dressrosa. and how Luffy kind of had a role in redefining that history by giving Don Qingjiao back what Garp had taken away. Because again, Oda has made it clear that he wants Luffy to be the one who surpasses all of the previous generations. And since Garp teamed up with Roger to defeat Rocks, I wonder how Oda is going to have Luffy surpass the God Valley incident.
So no matter what your opinion on this current arc of Wano has been, I think there is no denying, and I think we can all agree, that Wano is not a normal One Piece arc. And so that's code for Oda telling us to get hyped and expect the unexpected. Especially because he's been waiting for years to be able to draw this arc. That's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Who do you think Oda was referring to back in that statement in Jump Festa? Do you think he was talking about Emu, or do you think he was talking about Xebec? Also, who do you think is the 10th Titanic captain of the Blackbeard Pirates? And do you think that there's room enough for Xebec to be able to enter the present storyline? And if so, how? Thanks a bunch for watching. Like the video if you did. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Take care. Stay safe. Catch you guys later. Bye.